Welcome to AhvalTV.
Thank you.
Here we have today Güneş, Murat, Tezcür. He is at University of Florida. He is an expert on Kurdish issues and political violence, and he is currently at Jalal Talabani Chair of Kurdish Political Studies, and he's at University of Florida, Central Florida. I am sorry about that. Güneş, Murat, Tezcür is known as expert Kurdish issues in different states, different regions. And today we are going to ask him about the recent developments in northern Syria, as well as impending visit of the Secretary of State Tillerson's expected visit to Turkey. I think he will be in Turkey this Friday. We are very lucky to have Mr. Murat Güneş today, and I'll go and start my first question. Afrin operation, Turkish-led forces launched the operation almost a month ago. First of all, how do you see the operation? Do you think it is succeeding? Do you think it is meeting the expectations, whether on political side or military side?
So first of all, greetings from a balmy Orlando. So it's still like 75 degrees here. So regarding your question, I think it is important to look at from three different dimensions. The first is the domestic dimension, which basically means Turkish politics. The second one is the international reactions, like the more like geopolitical dimension. And final third dimension is the military, what is going on the ground. So let me start with the domestic dimension. So when you look at the Turkish public opinion, I mean, obviously we cannot talk about a very kind of a free environment, because we basically observe the criminalization of any kind of opposition to the operation, like the dissent. But at the same time, you basically see kind of a huge nationalist wave characterizing the public opinion. So it's not just like the government or the president who supports the operation, but then from the main opposition parties, obviously with the exception of HDP, you basically see different levels of support. So in this sense, well, it's obviously kind of maybe it will take much longer than just a month, this operation. But at the moment, we don't see much problems from the operation supporters' perspective regarding the domestic politics. So, I mean, it has a strong nationalist capital in this sense. And I mean, if you look at the similar operations, let's say by the Saudis, regarding what they call the Operation Restoring Hope in Yemen, it's anything but restoring hope. But I mean, yeah, in Saudis, it has been continuing for the last several years, and then there's no real domestic opposition. Or if you basically look at the Iranian involvement in the Syrian and Iraqi politics, again, maybe with the exception of in the latest demonstrations in December, you don't see much domestic opposition. Or if you look at the Israel's wars with Hezbollah, the last one back in 2006, I mean, yeah, you don't basically see much opposition. So what I try to say is that in this kind of operations in the Middle East, the domestic politics typically, there's really the around the flag effect, I would say. So regarding the international reactions, it is more complicated, obviously. So first of all, I think it's kind of more mixed record, I would say. So you don't see much explicit opposition from the dominating forces in the region. I mean, obviously, we can talk about Egypt and Syrian opposition, but then if you look at the Russian or the American positions, they are more ambivalent. I mean, it's clear that without the Russian explicit approval, then Turkey could not have conducted the operation because the airspace would have been closed. And then overall, even if there is some reaction from the Western public opinion regarding some civilian fatalities and damage done to the areas, well, I mean, it's still not enough to create lots of pressure on the Turkish government. So this is kind of a more mixed record. And finally, regarding the military dimension, I mean, I'm a military expert, so it's hard for me to judge the situation, and obviously I'm not observing directly. But what I can say is that in these kind of situations, and again, maybe Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Hutus in Yemen will be, I think, good analogies. You are facing organic insurgencies in the sense that these are insurgencies with a advantage of the terrain and the population. So they have a much stronger roots in the local population, and which basically gives them a strong advantage. Even if the Turkish army has a much stronger firepower, well, it is not sufficient to dislodge the basically the YPG forces from the most of the populated areas. And maybe it's not surprising that, I mean, it has been almost a month since the operation started, but then the territorial gains by the Turkish allies, the proxy forces, and then Turkish army have been limited. So, I mean, this is how I evaluate the operation at the moment after maybe like 25 days or so.
Let me ask about the U.S.-Turkey relations over Afrin and also Manbij, and finish with this. Apparently, as I mentioned, Secretary Tillerson is going to Turkey, I think, on Friday. Apparently, is going to also meet with Turkish president as well as other counterparts. What is your expectation? Do you think either sides are going to find any kind of common ground, whether in Manbij and generally over the support of the YPG and SDF?
I mean, first of all, Tillerson is a weak Secretary of State. I mean, it is just well known. And as you know very well, just until very recently, it was not very clear how long he will stay in the job. I mean, so far he's still in the job, but I mean, given the record of the administration, like people leaving and just like joining it, it is unclear. So I'm not sure that the Tillerson visit from this perspective will make a big difference. I mean, it's just pure speculation, but I mean, we have to accept that Tillerson is not Kissinger in a sense that, I mean, even if maybe he makes a deal with the president in Turkey, it doesn't mean that the Trump administration will actually act on it. I mean, just look at what happened with his North Korean initiative like earlier in 2017. I mean, so there's like some gaps between what the Secretary of State does and then what the Pentagon or the White House actually perceives. So this is a kind of caveat. But I mean, so let me give you a very brief historical perspective. I mean, if you look at like the reasons why the United States end up supporting the YPG or the PYD in Syria, it goes back to September or October 2014 when the Islamic State forces were sieging the city of Kobani. So I will say this was kind of a critical juncture in this war, especially regarding the Turkish-American relations, because when the Americans supported the YPG with heavy air bombardment and then with lots of logistical and military support, that became like a very important, like a path dependency, in the sense that once this started and Turkey was basically sidelined in the fall of 2014, the relationship became like very important over time. And this basically means that like in the last, I will say, more than 3 years, the YPG forces emerged as the most important allies of the United States, which obviously put lots of pressure on the Turkish-American relations. I mean, the relations have other issues like the Fethullah Gülen case and then like Reza Zarrab kind of issues. But I mean, in the most basic sense, the fundamental challenge characterizing the Turkish-American relations concerned the fact that the main allies of the United States in Syria are as a group which is deemed as a terrorist group by the Turkish government. So then the question emerges is that, I mean, what will be the longer term implications of that? I mean, it's hard to maybe make just a judgment about that in the long run, but at least for immediate future, maybe from an optimistic perspective, if the, let's say, Tillerson visit results in something maybe tangible, it can be some kind of negotiation regarding this small territory held by YPG on the west side of the Euphrates, the Manbij area, and maybe in exchange of some kind of concessions from this area, Turkey may stop its operations in Afrin. I mean, maybe this is like optimistic perspective. Yeah. But if nothing happens, then obviously Turkey will continue operations in Afrin. It is sometimes hard to understand like the Turkish ambitions, because obviously when you look at different discourses, it can be as broad as maybe going to the northern Iraq or the Kurdistan region of Iraq. But I mean, I think from a realistic perspective, I think Turkey wants to show its military prowess in Afrin so that it can get some concessions from the America in Syria. But I mean, ultimately, in the long run, it doesn't change the fact that regardless of any kind of a compromise between Turkey and United States government, well, I mean, then you still have the YPG or PYD controlling maybe like 1/4 of the entire Syria. And there is no way that will change in the foreseeable future, just given their military hegemony in the region.
And do you see any change that U.S. may give up on Kurds, meaning that leave Syria?
I mean, obviously, the main reason why the United States supports YPG for the last 3.5 years is because the fight against the Islamic State. And now we reach a stage in which the Islamic State is no longer a state. It is more like a underground insurgency. But then at the same time, there's a very important American priority, especially the Trump administration, which is their perceived Iranian expansionism. And if you look from this perspective, this can become like some kind of opportunity for the Turkish-American relations, because then, well, I mean, then YPG is an important ally against Islamic State for the United States. But then, I mean, it is not strong enough for American ambitions to roll back the Iranian influence in Syria, which basically means that then this can provide some kind of a silver lining for some kind of compromise between the American and Turkish relations. I mean, it's just pure speculation. But again, as long as the anti-Iranian position of the Trump administration become much more maybe prevalent, especially with the Israelis and the Saudi kind of maybe the support, then this will maybe change the dynamics regarding the priorities of the America in Syria. But I mean, we are not yet there, obviously, but this is just a possible outcome in the foreseeable future.
Thank you so much, Murat, Güneş. We appreciate your time, and we will continue to watch the Kurdish issues. Apparently, Kurdish issues are going to dominate times to come. Mm-hmm. We are hoping to host you in coming times once again. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure, and hopefully we will see some kind of a political resolution to the Kurdish question in the foreseeable future. Just to be at the risk of being maybe sounding optimistic, but yeah.
Thank you for being optimistic.